Hey there, Sportsline on your television. Steve Lehman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night on News Channel 5+. We are in sort of the doldrums of the summer, if you will, but Predators development camp started today over at Centennial Sportsplex. The draft picks from over the weekend already across the pond in a lot of cases and hanging out with the team and starting their development process at the ripe old age of 18 in a lot of cases. Several other guys back. L.A. Tolvanen, probably the biggest name there that everybody's looking forward to seeing because he made his NHL debut with the Predators in late March and early April this year, played 3 games with the team before they kind of decided that he didn't fit in well with this team going into the playoffs. But he fits very well in with this team moving forward and their plans and what he can do for the team. So he's on the ice this week trying to take that final step and get used to the smaller ice of the North American game and the NHL game once again as he looks to try to make this team coming up in training camp this fall. And then Dante Fabro, who's actually the highest drafted player that the Predators have taken. He was their 17th overall selection 2 years ago. He's also there. He's chosen to go the college route. He's playing at Boston University right now, having a very fine career there. So likely not a guy that figures into the plans for this season, but a guy who now is in his 3rd development camp with the Preds and is learning everything about the system while still participating at the college game and is taking the next step in his game right now. So he's another guy to keep an eye on throughout the course of this week. We will hear from some of them coming up on the program tonight. Some other things to talk about, though. The College World Series Championship Series supposed to start tonight. Should have started tonight at 6 o'clock. But when the sun was out, they decided to not play because rain may be coming. And it was coming. It was on the radar. It was definitely coming to Omaha. There's no question. But for anybody who has watched this College World Series, there has been so much rain. I mean, over 6 inches in like 10 days span. That they cannot help. But they have done way too much looking at the radar of what is potentially coming or may hit them and throw the tarp on the field. And it is moved games from night to the next day, from one day to the next day. It has been a mess all College World Series long. And here we are in the championship series now. And they could have taken the field at 6 o'clock tonight. And they could have played for probably 90 minutes before any rain would have showed up. And instead, they sat there in sunshine for a big part of it. Now, ultimately, the rain is there. We'll see. It's supposed to be a pretty big sell. We'll see if they can get on the field at all tonight. If not, it pushes the game back yet another day and distorts the College World Series Championship Series and probably pushes the end of the season at least another day. So we will see what happens. It'll be an interesting series. Oregon State is a team that can really mash, and they have been red hot since losing their first game in Omaha. They now have the chance to become just the 4th team ever to lose its initial game at the College World Series and come all the way back through the losers bracket to win the whole thing. Oregon State has already done that back in 2006. They've got a chance to do it again tonight or this week in the championship series whenever it gets played out. Meanwhile, Arkansas is another team that can really hit the ball well. They've also pitched particularly well in Omaha. And the Razorbacks, who were a very good SEC team, don't get this wrong, they were the number 5 overall seed in the country, so clearly they had a successful season. But most people spent their time talking about Florida. Some people talked about Ole Miss, didn't even get out of regional play. Not a lot of people talked about the Razorbacks this year, and here they are in Omaha, the only unbeaten team at the College World Series. They rolled through their bracket play, and now here they are opposite Oregon State. So we'll keep you updated throughout the week on that, but they should be in a game. We should be able to give you some kind of a score update, even if they were in a rain delay at this point. But instead, they waited until the rain came, and now they're in a rain delay. We got an NBA, NHL free agency moving up. Obviously, we're moving towards the midway point of the baseball season. And perhaps the most interesting sports storyline today was at the World Cup. I know a lot of people have been Oh, maybe underwhelmed by the World Cup, by the fact that the United States is not in it and did not qualify to go to Russia this year. So how invested are you in all of these group play matchups? I don't know. I don't think the ratings will be through the roof. I think we can say that for sure. But today's games were phenomenal. Phenomenal all the way through. Particularly if you look at Group B. Group B was a loaded group with Portugal and Spain, Morocco and Iran. And particularly Portugal and Spain, you thought these are the teams that are likely to move on. But not so fast if you were watching these games this afternoon when it came down to the stretch. Anything could have happened at that point. Morocco was leading Spain 2-1 in stoppage time. Portugal was up 1-0 on Iran at that point in stoppage time. If those results would have held up, it probably would have sent the goal differential, but either Morocco or Spain could have gone with Portugal into the next round. Well, then Iran has, this is all in stoppage time, mind you, has a play that goes into the box, looks like a handball against Spain. They go to video replay after the refs did not call it a handball on the field. They go to a video replay. In the meantime, while they're in the replay, Spain scores in the other match to tie Morocco and avoid a disastrous loss. They get their second draw in pool play. Oh, by the way, that had to go to replay. While they're in replay confirming that goal, they come back and award Iran a penalty kick, to which Iran scores. That game ends in a 1-1 draw. They go back to Spain and Morocco. That goal that tied the game is upheld because he was clearly onside. That game ends in a draw. And so what happened there in the span of just about 120 seconds of game action, took a lot longer than that with reviews and other things, but about 120 seconds of actual soccer action today, is Portugal won the group. Portugal looked like it was going to win the group, with Iran moving on with them and Spain stunningly being left at home. Instead, Spain wins the group on goal differential, beating out Portugal, and Iran is left at home. Now, everybody thought Spain and Portugal was going to advance going into the group and going into the World Cup, and so ultimately there's no big upset there. But the drama today on the pitch in Russia was absolutely fantastic stuff. So if you have anything to say about that, or if you've been watching this World Cup action, feel free to chime in and be a part of the program tonight. 737-7767 is the number. We would love to hear from you. And then another big story from over the weekend, always want to give him a shout out when we can. Joseph Newgarden, the Hendersonville native, IndyCar champ last year. He won 2 of the first 4 races of the season this year, but he'd been in a little bit of a funk over the last month or so. Last 5 races, he hadn't finished higher than 8th in any of them. 3 of those races, he finished outside of the top 10. It had really sunk him in the points race this year as he looks to defend his IndyCar championship. Well, yesterday broke out of that slump with a win at Road America up in Wisconsin, the Grand Prix of Kohler. Newgarden gets his series best 3rd victory of the season and moves right back into the points race. He's only 50 points behind. They've got, I believe, 7 races, maybe 8 races left in the season, just past the halfway point. So a lot of racing left to do, but that was a big win for him yesterday. Obviously, it's a win, his 10th of his career. So that's a milestone moment for him indeed. First ever win at Kohler, but maybe more importantly to the grand picture of things is the fact that it gets him back into this points race where he has a chance to defend his title for Team Penske later on this summer and into the fall. Our phone lines are open tonight. 737-7767 is the number. We want to hear from you, and we will begin tonight with Brian. Brian, thanks for the call. You're first up here on Sportsline.
Hey, number 1. I like that. Thanks, everybody.
You bet.
I think that what Russia's the home field advantage. They've been doing good.
Except for they lost today. They got beat by Uruguay.
Looked bad, and then they won. I mean, they tied or something.
Well, they lost today, but they moved on to the group play because they won their first two.
It's a great South American team that won besides Germany last time. Usually it's like, Argentina or Brazil, and Argentina's out, and I don't know what Brazil's doing, and how is Paraguay, Uruguay, or any of those guys doing?
Uruguay won Group A. Brazil is in position to advance, and Argentina is not officially out of it. They're in deep trouble.
I'm putting my money on Uruguay against Russia for the final whole shebang.
All right, well, that can't happen based off of the way knockout play works. They're in the same group, so they would get knocked out somewhere along the way before that. But they played today. Uruguay beat Russia to win Group A.
Oh, yeah, so that's what I said. They're great teams. I think Uruguay, and I'm going to put my money on Uruguay. And Mexico, that was weird, when they beat Germany or somebody, the champions from last time. That was kind of strange.
#1 team in the world, yeah.
That was kind of odd.
Well, that's why you play the games, right? Can't play it on paper.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, Brian, you got anything else?
Oh, yeah, the Titans, I remember when they're training, they've got lots of, Gatorade bottles laying around in their rooms. It's kind of like a motel room in the training camp, right off Baptist Park or St. Thomas or the hotel room. And, boy, I'll tell you what, it's going to be something, when they're training with this heat. And that always, shows what's going to go on. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's certainly the time of year where you get battle tested. That's why they call it training camp. Unfortunately for these guys, they don't have the two-a-days anymore. They get mandated days off every fifth day and things like that. So it's not as bad as it once was. But it certainly is a time of year where you're going to get out there and you're going to get bloody, you're going to get sweat, and you're going to have your toughness both physically and mentally tested. Yeah. And that's good.
And that's not happening yet. That's going to start happening in a few weeks here, right?
End of July is the start of training camp.
Oh, geez, those guys, man. And a buddy of mine, he wasn't you, but he was another reporter. He'd go in there and open up the door and just kind of look at them, and they'd be out. There's Gatorade bottles all over the room, man.
You got to hydrate and you got to sleep. So, Brian, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
All right, later, dude.
All right, see ya. Let's move on. Say hello to Jay. Jay, good evening.
Hey, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well.
Hey, I was just wondering. Of course, I'm from. I like England. I think they're doing real well. I'm pulling for them, but
they've looked great.
I just wondered what you thought of the Commodores this year. I know we got MTSU first game. That's a scary game. What's your thoughts?
It is, although if you remember back to last year, they handled that game really well. They went down there, they were focused, the offense looked good, and the defense dominated in that game. It is a tricky game, maybe especially because of the way that game played out. Do you overlook that test a little bit this year when it's back at home and you handled it so well last year? I think Vanderbilt's an interesting study. There's not a lot of people talking about them. When you look at the SEC East, everybody's talking about Georgia because of the year they had last year. There's some focus on Florida because of Dan Mullen moving to take over the Gators. And South Carolina, who impressed a lot of people with the way they rose up last year and were a bowl team when nobody was expecting that. That's sort of your emphasis in the SEC East right now. Not a lot of people talking about Vanderbilt, and that may be a mistake because you have Kyle Shermer, who's one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the SEC, back for his senior season. Derek Mason thinks like he has multiple weapons at wide receiver and tight end that can catch the ball, led by Kalijah Lipscomb, who had a breakout year last year. And even though you lost Ralph Webb, I think Vanderbilt still feels pretty good about their running game. Kari Blasingame, obviously Keyshawn Vaughn, the transfer from Illinois and former Pearl Cone standout, steps into the mix. If they can have the offensive line perform at an adequate level, I think this could be a pretty good Vanderbilt offense, one of the better ones we've seen in recent years. And you expect Derek Mason's defense to always be solid for you. And I think after last year, when they were humiliated at times, the Alabama game comes to mind, some of the other games late in the season, I expect them to have a bounce back year as a unit. So if they can sort of put it together on the two lines, those are my question marks for them right now. I think there's a chance this Vanderbilt team could be pretty good. I would say if I looked at the schedules right now, there's a much better chance Derek Mason and Vanderbilt goes to a bowl game this year with this team than Jeremy Pruitt and Tennessee goes to a bowl game this year with his roster in year one and everything he has to put into place there. We'll obviously see how that plays out. But I think Vanderbilt has a chance to surprise some people this fall with this roster. Back to the phones we go. Let's say hello to Dan. Dan, good evening.
Sir, I was just wondering, I know that the Titans have a new defensive coordinator, and I haven't been keeping up with it lately, but what is Dick LeBeau? Did he retire? Or is
Yes, he did retire.
he was in there in some form, 47 years or something?
Yeah, gosh, to even think about how long, I think it was 49 if I remember correctly, and that includes his playing career, which he was of course a Hall of Fame defensive back in his own right, and then the lengthy coaching career that he had. But yeah, I mean, basically from the time he was about 21 or 22 years of age to age 80, he was involved in the National Football League either as a player, an assistant coach, or a head coach. And finally, after last season and the coaching change here, he decided that was the time to hang it up and just play golf now. So he's out of it.
That guy had to love football, didn't he?
Oh, no question about it.
Call and I'll hang up and listen, sir.
You bet. Thanks, Dan. We appreciate the call. There's no question about it. Dick LeBeau loves football. There's no question about that. I do know this. When he moved here to Nashville to take the job with Mike Mularkey and be a part of the staff here, one of the things he said was when I was leaving Pittsburgh, because remember, after a long, historically good run there, multiple stints in Pittsburgh actually, he was done there. He was done with Mike Tomlin. He was done with the Steelers. And he's basically said, when I got done there, I wasn't sure I was done coaching yet. But one thing I knew is I needed to move someplace that my wife wanted to be. She's put up with me for long enough in this marriage and everything that I've had to do as a coach. I need to be someplace where she wants to be. And she wanted to be in Nashville. She loved it here. She loved it here after they moved here. And so I think when he looked around and saw what happened with the Titans at the end of last season and the coaching changes and all that, and remember, Mike Vrabel's a defensive-minded guy. He ended up bringing in Dean Pease as his defensive coordinator. But, you know, there was no guarantee it was going to work out there. And I think Dick LeBeau knew that right from the jump and thought, okay, my wife's happy here. We're in our 80s basically at this point. It's time to enjoy life, let her enjoy life where she wants to enjoy life, and maybe step away a little bit. I am sure he's playing a bunch of golf right now because he is a heck of a golfer. He gets around very, very well. He looks like he's still 50, by the way. But I think he's enjoying life here in Nashville or around and probably traveling and doing all those sorts of things. But, yep, he decided to finally walk away from the NFL game after basically 5 decades involved with the sport. All right, we can continue your phone calls. Our phone lines are now wide open if you want to get in on the conversation. 737-7767 is the number. We'll also come back, hear from some of the guys from the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame induction stuff that took place recently here in Nashville. Blaine Bishop, one of the guys. Mike Fisher honored as Tennessee Sportsperson of the Year there. We'll hear from them coming up a little bit here. Also look back on the life and the legacy of the voice of the Vols, John Ward. We'll get into that a little bit more and what he meant to a lot of people here. John Burton did a great piece for us last night on the Electric Power Company's Sunday Sports Central, so we'll hear from that tonight as well. Also get back more into Predators development camp as we move along here. Just getting started. This is Sportsline on News Channel 5+.